Hello, I'm John Molesky, and this is Wilson Center Now, a production of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. My guest today is John Thon Majok. John Thon is director of the Refugee and Forced Displacement Initiative. We call it RAFDI here at the Wilson Center. He also serves as deputy director of development and senior director of grants management for the Wilson Center's development unit. John Thon, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So visitors to the RAFDI site will see language that says the initiative aims to expand the space for new perspectives, constructive dialogue, and sustainable solutions. It also mentions the idea of a human development lens. John Thon, could we start there? Could you talk to us about this emphasis on new perspectives, what that means to your approach, and what you mean by a human development lens?
Forced displacement is a topic that has captured the headline for decades. But recently, the surging numbers and the complexity has calls for a different approach. And RAFDI was established to expand the space for discussion on bringing the new approach, new perspective. And the new perspective recognize the complexity of forced displacement. It also recognized the fact that the narrative has been focusing on refugees as passive victims. But for RAFDI approach, new approach is that RAFDI recognize refugees as people with agency. They can bring their perspectives to help us address the challenges of forced displacement. And that is by using the human development approach, which put the displaced people at the center of analysis. So using lived experience, their stories to inform policies and programming. And it is simply like, if we are talking about men's health, and you are missing men at the table of discussion, the question is why? Don't they have agency, or we don't have men? And that's the same thing here, bringing the displaced people, their voices, their lived experience as part of the discussion to inform policies of the 21st century forced displacement.
So we, your colleagues, know your personal story, but I think it's important to tell our viewers and listeners that John Thon's work with RAFDI is informed by a personal experience. He came to the U.S. as a former refugee from South Sudan, and John Thon lived in refugee camps in Ethiopia and Kenya for 13 years. And if you could share with us, John Thon, how that has affected your perspective on how to approach the subject matter. You're not just an analyst or a theorist. You have real-life experience to inform your perspective.
Sure, and this is what RAFDI is building on, bringing the lived experience of those who have been impacted the most by forced displacement. And why is this important? I think people, when policies are made, they are made to better the lives of average citizens, to better human lives. And human is a relational animal. We connect. That connection comes from personal stories. And so if you inform a member of Congress discussing a certain piece of legislation and you bring in your personal touch to that, it will stick. And I think that's what this is all about. Oftentimes we put the statistics out there and people just see this as numbers. I think putting the human face behind those numbers is what lived experience brings. So having lived in those camps for quite a number of years and got the opportunity to come here to the United States, I feel like it's my obligation to bring to the surface the situation of those who are still going through that experience that I went through several decades before. And so it is not just telling a story for the sake of it, connecting it to policy and the programming itself, informing how we program or how we intervene in the refugee camps, in bringing refugees to safety. Those stories there's no substitute for a practical live experience. We can study everything, but I think that's the importance of it. It connects with audience.
Absolutely. And the stories change everything, right? If it's just numbers, we begin to become numb because the numbers are so staggering. And speaking of that, I'd like to get your thoughts on some of the current headlines. There's the situation in Sudan. There's Ukraine. Talk about how RAFDI is looking at these situations and what viewers need to know.
RAFDI is informing policies and programming on forced displacement challenges. One of the immediate challenges that forced displaced people face is, how to be safe. Safety is the number one thing. And then the basic emergency needs, food, shelter, water. That is part of the triple challenge of forced displacement, meeting the emergency need of the people. And that's what we have currently in Sudan. Within 1 year of the crisis, we have over 200,000 people displaced, crossing the borders to other countries. The rest, about 3.7 displaced internally, including those who were displaced before the crisis. And in the situation in Sudan, the people are exiting the country using 5 main humanitarian corridors. One is they go to Egypt in the northern part, and then they go to South Sudan in the southern part of the country, and then to Ethiopia, to Chad, to Central African Republic. All these neighboring countries have their own challenges, and some of whom already had refugees inside Sudan before the current humanitarian crisis. And so the needs are so high at this point, but so is the need for safety in particular. People are trapped within the country. The warring parties are still not allowing humanitarian access. So that's one part of it. And then you focus in the medium term, which is now this situation is not going to go away anytime soon. And that is what we have seen in Ukraine. It started like a 7-day thing, but now it is in its second year. And so we have to be ready for the humanitarian, the emergency need, but also plan for the development, the long-term part of it. And those are the factors that we currently face. With these two countries and other countries such as Venezuela, Afghanistan, and what we saw also in Israel and the Palestinians. So the world is on fire, and we have to be ready to plan for both the emergency need, but also think of long-term, while also addressing the root cause right there.
And no one country can address this on its own, right? And you look at whether it's the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, the attempts to have a coherent response to this burning world that you describe. Is there enough communication and cooperation among nations to address the level of need?
Well, the United Nations system is the mechanism through which all countries supposed to address all this, because crises like this call for collective response, international cooperation. Is that there? Well, it is there in paper, but also there is geopolitical dynamic there playing it out in the Security Council. You have Russia, and you have China, you have the United States, and these world superpowers are at loggerheads. So it makes this situation worse for the average civilian that are really suffering, not knowing what is playing it out there. But I think collective effort is needed. In the case of Sudan, I think the African Union as a regional body should step up. That's learning a lesson from other regions, what we saw in Venezuela when the countries in the Latin American step up to help. We also saw that in EU when the Ukrainian crisis happened. It is the immediate countries that always come first. But because the complexity of the issue, it needs the United States and other countries that have leverage with the warring parties within Sudan or Ukraine to come to exert their leverage so that this fight is stopped so that civilians are safe.
What is your level of concern as it relates to, and I'm trying to come up with an appropriate term, what I would describe as refugee fatigue for the world? We've had Syria, we've had the pandemic, we have climate change issues that are forcing migration. When you look at the big picture, the world has been dealing with an accelerated movement of peoples. What is your concern about the level of fatigue as nations attempt to address this?
That's the right word, fatigue. There is donor fatigue. There is the civilian fatigue, the civilian that are, there is the Kenyan proverb that goes, when two elephants are fighting, only the grass suffer. And the suffering grass has also fatigue. The host countries have the host country fatigue because they are hosting these people without enough resources. So there is fatigue everywhere. What can we do? I think addressing the root cause, prevention is always less costly than reacting to things. And these situations evolve at our watch, and we let them happen anyway, and then we react to them. And so I think addressing the root causes before they cause all these human accidents will be less costly, and we will experience less fatigue as a result. And so don't let this situation spill over or get out of hand. And that is a message to the international community and to countries that have the leverage, because it's all going to spill over to us in one way or another.
I want to get some quick thoughts from you on the World Bank's World Development Report of 2023 on migrants, refugees, and society. I know you participated in an event, a launch event, and you've talked about this. One of the things the report says is migration is a development challenge. About 184 million people, 2.3% of the world's population, live outside their country of nationality. What does this report offer in terms of useful information?
I think if there is a message from that report, the World Development Report, is that the message of hope, that migration can be a force for good if we use it in the right way. And the complexity of forced displacement, forced migration, when we talk is that there are economic migrants. They are different from refugees that are fleeing the country as a result of fear or persecution or violence. Economic migrants want opportunities. And so the report made two distinctions. One is that for economic migrant, it used the labor economics, that when you match the skill with the demand in the destination country, then migration becomes a force for good. In terms of the refugees, it is the motive. Why do people cross borders to other countries? Because of the fear. And so if we protect refugees according to the international law and obligation, then these people can also become productive citizens because we give them a space to exercise their human freedom, dignity in our border. And so there are those, and the theory of change is that if we do this, if we manage it well, and forced migration need to be managed. It is not something that will be solved. It will continue to increase, so we will have to think of ways to manage it. And if we manage it well, it will work in our favor. If we leave it uncontrolled, then we will see all these talks unending.
John Thon, as you know, all Wilson Center programs consider the question of relevance, and their goal is to be as relevant as possible. Your program could not be more relevant. And I was remiss at the introduction to not say congratulations on reaching your 1-year anniversary. June 2022 was the launch of RAFDI. And give us some insight into what you have coming up. I know you have a number of major events on the calendar, a symposium in The Hague, a working group in-person meeting, World Refugee Day coming up also in the same month that you launched the program last year. Give us a little preview of what you have planned.
We have our working group, a group of experts, those who are and practitioners in the field of forced migration. That working group in person is taking place tomorrow here at the Wilson Center. And that is after a long virtual meetings, as you know, during the COVID era. We're still in there. And so that one is coming up and it's exciting. Second is that the event that is coming up in The Hague. You know, we launched RAFDI in the City of Angels in Los Angeles, June 2022. Now in The Hague, we are celebrating our first anniversary in the City of Peace and Justice. So that if there is a good news, it is a good news because RAFDI is between the two cities that has good future outlook, and we feel good about that despite what is going on. I think we inform the discussions, and we look forward to this. And the event in The Hague is how to use stories to inform policy. And we will talk about, we have photo documentary journalists coming up to show us some of what they have done from the field. And then we talk about this in that particular part of the world. So there could be no more a good place to do that than The Hague to celebrate the first anniversary.
Terrific symbolism in both the City of Angels, as you put it, and in The Hague, and storytelling, where we began our conversation. That's what really can motivate people to act. John Thon, thank you for joining us today and filling us in on RAFDI. Congratulations on the anniversary, and best of luck ongoing with your terrific work.
Thank you for having me, John.
If you'd like to know more about John Thon's work in RAFDI, visit the Wilson Center, wilsoncenter.org. You'll find the initiative. It's called Refugee and Forced Displacement Initiative. We affectionately refer to it as RAFDI, and John Thon is its leader. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed this edition of Wilson Center Now, and that you'll join us again soon. Until then, for all of us at the center, I'm John Molesky. Thanks for your time and interest.